So one of my clients had given me this beautiful freshly caught sockeye salmon, and he had a bunch of fillets just because he'd have been on a fishing boat for months and months. And I'm going to use one of the fillets today to make two types of salmon. One will be which is on my menu, which is a caper Boursin filled phyllo dough with the salmon in it. And then that comes with the red pepper butter sauce. And I'm not calling it a beurre blanc because it has cream in it, which is a little bit of a cheat. And then the other way I'm preparing this is just a nice broiled and seared salmon with a lemon dill butter sauce as well. And alongside that, I'll be serving potatoes. And before I get started, I wanted to make a note about food safety and handling with this stuff. Because it's frozen, what I did was I thawed it in the sink. And then as soon as it was thawed in some warm water, I put it right back in the fridge. That's a great way to thaw food. Another great way is to just keep it in the fridge. If you have a few days for it to thaw, maybe put it in the fridge the night before, or if it's a larger piece of meat, it might take 2 or 3 days to thaw. But the last thing that you want to do is just leave it on the counter. That's just, it puts you at risk of having bacteria. So I'm going to get started. Another food safety thing is I always wet a towel and put it underneath my cutting board so that my cutting board is not moving around while I'm using my knife. So a lot of people, when I'm cooking, ask me, how do I manage to keep everything warm? And it's really, a big factor is that I time things from the things that would take longest to cook to the things that would be quicker. And that way I have a streamlined system that where by the time everything's ready to come together, it's all at the same temperature. So here we go. I just have some multicolored potatoes. You can get away with cooking the potatoes at 400 degrees at sea level, but up here in high altitude, close to 10,000 feet, I need to pump my oven a little bit higher. So I always use 425 when I'm roasting vegetables. So that was pretty quick. I'm just gonna toss them in oil and salt, and I'm gonna pop them right in the oven. So I got my oil and my little salt cellar here. And these look pretty, actually, you gotta watch out. This one's a little rotten, but the rest of these look like they are good to go. And that's just canola oil. And then a little bit more salt, and potatoes go very well together. And I'm not gonna mess with these too much once I get them in the oven. If I see they're getting too dark on the bottom, I might toss them. But other than that, I'm just gonna let them roast. The next thing I'll do in preparation of my sauce is to prep my red pepper. And I'm gonna just put it in a saute pan. If you have plenty of baking sheets at home, feel free to use one of those. But sometimes my kitchen can be a little bit limited. And you can see I did this a little bit quickly, but I cut off the top and bottom and just kind of rolled out the red pepper. And what this is going to allow me to do is get some really clean slices. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing. I'm going to oil them and a little bit of salt, but I have to remember I'm adding salt in now so that when it comes to making the sauce, I don't over salt it at the end. Now these usually need a little bit more babysitting in the oven, so I'm going to have to toss these a few times because the peppers around the edges will cook faster than the ones in the middle. I'm going to bring out my salmon in preparation for cooking it now. These sockeyes aren't too big, so I won't get many servings out of one fillet. And especially not even that much since I'm cutting it in half to do 2 kinds of preparations. So I'm going to use the thicker part for the preparation where I'm wrapping it in phyllo dough because it's just going to take longer to cook. And so I'm going to cut this in half, and then this side I'll reserve and put it back in the fridge. I want to keep my salmon as cold as possible. And this one I'll just set right here because I'm going to use it quickly. The first thing I need to do is make my filling. It's kind of important that you have a food processor for this step because it's hard to blend thicker things like this in a blender. You need more surface area that the food processor provides. So I don't have to make very much of this because I have such a small piece of salmon. So I'm going to use half a container, and I'm gonna have leftovers, I know this, but half a container of this sour cream, half of this capers, and then half of the Boursin cheese. And I have the garlic and fine herb Boursin. So we have to do this in the proper order or else it just won't blend properly. I'm going to take out some of the liquid for the caper. Sometimes I use the caper liquid, but for this I can't have my mixture be too watered down, so I have to be very careful about how I'm doing this. So here we go. Half the bottle of capers. And blend it. And then scrape. I want to make sure it's a little bit smaller. Okay. Next step is my cheese. So half of this. And then scrape my mixture again. Try to get my cheese and capers incorporated. And I washed off my spatula because I'm probably going to use sour cream for something else, and I don't want to get any capers or cheese into my sour cream. So half of this will go in, and then just a little bit of salt. I'm not using lemon because I will have lemon in my sauce, so I don't want to overdo it with the lemon. And then I'm going to scrape this down, and it's good. It's nice and thick, so I know that it's going to stay on my salmon while it's cooking. So you can see this. I'm just going to blend it one more time just for good measure. And just making sure my cutting board is nice and dry so I don't get my phyllo dough, so I don't get it soggy. Okay, the other part of this is I need to melt some butter because that's what I will spread with a pastry brush between the layers of the dough. And this dish calls for like a good amount. With all the sauces, there's a lot of butter involved. So I don't usually use salted butter, but I had an extra stick here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use it today. But there's not really any salt in the phyllo dough, so this little bit of salt is actually gonna add a lot of flavor to my salmon. And for this, I probably just need half a stick to start. I can always melt more. While that's melting, I'm going to open up this dough. Now, there's a really proper way to use this, and I'm not gonna do that today. If you are going to be doing a lot of work with the dough, it's wise to take a damp towel and cover the dough so it won't dry out. But I'm not too concerned. I'm not working with that big of a piece today. And so I might overlap it. We'll see how big the salmon is compared to this dough. So if I had two pieces here, one sheet would be perfect for each piece, but I need to double up this Filo dough so that I can make sure that I have enough to cover the salmon completely. And normally I would actually add some salt to my butter, but since it's salted, I'm not going to today. All right, so let's do it this way. And I'm going to slightly overlap right in the middle. And then I'll just alternate. All right, so here we go. Butter is going on. This Filo dough is not quite thawed, so it has a tendency to rip. But if you know you're going to be making this dish, you can keep a roll in your fridge the day before, and it'll be the perfect temperature for you to work with. All right. And I'm thinking I will be doing 4 total layers. Maybe 3. Let's do 3. Since it's such a thin piece of salmon, I don't want to go overboard on this. If you have a thicker piece though, you can go with 4 or even 5, just depending on how much of a crust you would like. So that's 2. And on the 3rd layer, and I'm not going to brush this layer. Instead, this is where I lay down my mixture. Look at my size of salmon. The reason I like doing it this way too is it keeps the salmon so moist and tender when you're baking it. Okay, and final step. I'm gonna give this, not too much, I'm gonna give this a little bit of salt. And then I'm going to flip it over onto my mixture. And I'm just going to fold the sheets over themselves. Okay. And then I have this pan prepped. You don't have to use parchment, but in this case, I'm just going to make it easier to clean up. So it's really pretty. I'm going to give it one more coat of butter. Okay. And then, yep, usually I would salt this a little bit, but since there's already salt in the butter, I'm not gonna do that part. So this is great. You can prep it ahead of time and then just when you're ready, pop it in the oven. All right, this is a good time to give my peppers a flip. And if I feel like this is starting to take too long, I'm just gonna pop them right on the stovetop and cook them from there. I'm going to use a fish spatula to release the potatoes from the pan. I can't caramelize it if I don't have oil under these potatoes, so I'm gonna add a little bit more and make sure they're not dry to the pan here. All right, we're looking good. Well, I'm gonna get my space cleaned up and I have to wait a little bit on my potatoes and my red peppers, but I'll come back and we'll finish everything up. Okay, so it's been about 25 minutes, 25, and I can see all the color of my potatoes, and my red pepper should be tender enough that I can start to make my sauce. Oh yeah. So my potatoes look good. I'm gonna take them out for now. And what I can do is just pop them back in the oven just to reheat them once I'm ready to serve. And then you can see I have a nice color on my red peppers. So I'm going to need my food processor again for this part. So as a reminder, you can do the lemon dill version of this without the food processor, but if you're going to use, make the encrusted salmon with the red pepper, you're going to need a food processor. So also noting, I'm going to pour this oil in as well, because all that flavor from the red pepper is in the oil. So if I were to just throw out that oil, I'd be losing a lot of flavor. And that's how we get the most flavor out of our food. All right, so blending this up. I'm gonna use a little bit more red pepper. There we go. So I changed my mind. I used almost all of the red pepper for this sauce. Hey, what happens? You have to see it, kind of eyeball it. All right, let's do that. And so my next step too is I'm gonna blend this one more time. I'm gonna add some cream in. Come on. I'm going to empty this into a pot. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more cream. I'm gonna turn my heat on. Okay, so to recap, what I have left is to finish my two sauces and then sear off my salmon and also put my other salmon in the oven. So let's think, what's going to take the longest? I need to put my crusted salmon in the oven now. And then, so I have the heat turned on here. This pan will be for searing off my salmon. This is the more simple of the sauce. All I need to do is add in some whipping cream and cut up some dill. So I'll take a few sprigs of dill and make sure I'm taking these leaves off of this tough part here. Okay. And that's enough dill for our sauce. It's a pretty small piece of salmon. Give it a little rough chop and put it right in the cream. And just let that cook down. So you can see this is very thick, it's almost dry. I'm going to take it off the heat and now I'm going to get my butter ready to mix in with that sauce. So 1.5 sticks. Chop it. Don't be like me, don't get dill on your butter and get your sauces confused. Wash off your cutting board. Okay, so in we go. And then what I'm doing here is putting it back on the heat and stirring it. I can't walk away from this sauce. If this butter separates, my sauce is ruined. I'm also turning down my heat because I don't want the butter to melt too fast. So you see it starting. Butter will melt into the sauce. Keep stirring, stirring until all the butter is incorporated. And I can take it off the heat now because this is hot enough that the butter will melt right in. And it's time for me to taste this. Now remember, we put salt in it, so I'll see how much more salt we'll need. So I'm just gonna give a small pinch. I'm gonna taste it again. That's real good. All right, optional, you can choose not to put lemon in. You have enough acid with that caper and sour cream. But if you choose, if you want a little bit more of a lemon sauce, go ahead and add some lemon in. Not too much. And just set this to the side until your fish is ready. Over here I have my dill and my cream reducing. So next, I'm going to sear off my salmon. Look how nice and golden, nice and crusty, I love it. All right. Stop stirring, Jenny. We need this to boil and reduce. All right, I can also add some salt in at this point. And then for this guy, I'm going to only add in 1 stick of butter. Let's get some cubes going on here. And also, let's get this the salmon seasoned. Remember, with fish, salt goes a long way. It's really easy to oversalt your fish. So we're going to just do a light coat of salt. You're going to get some more salt from that sauce as well. So don't worry too much about not putting enough salt. And then I'm going to put pepper on this. Now once this pan is hot enough, I'll pop my salmon in. And what I'm looking for is to get a nice crispy golden crust, or nice crispy golden skin on the salmon. It's pretty hot, so here we go, right in the pan. All right, how's my cream doing? It's still not very thick, so I'm gonna let it cook some more. How's my Filo? My Filo, let's pop it up here. Get the potatoes on the bottom rack and bump my heat up to 450. Actually, scratch that. I'm going to low broil it. Just be careful with your Filo that it doesn't get burnt. All right, so a little shake. All right, it's not stuck to the pan. All right, so I'm always constantly, how am I able to juggle everything? I'm smelling and I'm checking. So I'm gonna check my oven. My Filo does okay. Let's check the skin. Heat can go down a little bit. Sometimes I always complain about the electric stoves. You're not gonna get as good of a sear with having a direct contact pan, especially if the pan's not completely flat. All right, over here, our cream is almost there. I feel like I want some more dill in this sauce. for flavor. It smells so good. All right, this salmon's ready. I know it is. You can see the darkness around the meat here. And if I flip it up to show you, it's even a little bit too toasty. It's just so hard to work with these stoves. All right, here we go. I'm not flipping my meat side. I want my meat to be nice and tender, so I'm just going to broil it. And that way I'll have a nice crispy skin, and then I'll have a nice tender meat. My cream is ready. Let's take it off the heat, let it calm down for a second. In goes my butter. All right, give a little bit of stir. Let's put it back on the heat, but lower heat. And whisking this as quickly as I can. If you feel like your butter's melting too fast, just take it off the heat for a second and put it right back on. Check my Filo. Filo's doing good. All right. Almost there. And I'm going to finish this off with the juice of lemon. That lemon's really going to perk up your salmon. All right, off the heat. It looks like, except for that one little tiny bit, we're all incorporated. The juice of a full lemon. I don't want to water this down too much. We're going to go the juice of 1 or 3/4 of a lemon. So just a little bit from this end. All right, so let's take a little taste tester here. It's really good. Very lemony. A hint of dill at the end. And I'm going to just add a little bit more salt. And both of our sauces are good to go. And there you have it. This is my lemon dill salmon and my red pepper butter sauced encrusted Filo dough salmon. Thanks for watching. I pressed play, right? Okay, yeah. Oh my God.